Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Triggering Your Business Processes to Go Paper-Free, and it all begins with Capture. I'm Teresa Resick, Director of Webinars here at AIIM, and AIIM is your host and producer of today's event. And with me today are AIIM's Chief Analyst, Bob Larrabee, and from Kodak Alaris, we have Helka Fast. And Kodak Alaris is the underwriter of today's webinar, and we thank them for their support. And thank you for taking the time to join us today. And I just want to offer a few pointers to you for today's webinar, as you see AIIM's About Us slide up on the screen right now. And by joining our webinars live, you can customize your own viewing experience. Feel free to open, close, or resize the different windows. Across the bottom of your screen is a list of all the widgets that are available to you. You can download a PDF of the presentation at any time. Just look to the resources list that's to the right side of the slide area. There are also a few other documents and links in there that can help you learn more about today's topic. Feel free to ask questions throughout the hour using the Q&A feature. We will hold these questions until the end, where we should have about 5 or 10 minutes to answer them. But you can also use this feature to comment or ask for technical assistance. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted to AIIM.org's Webinars on Demand library in just a few days. And now to introduce our featured speakers today, very pleased to have Bob Larrabee, who is the VP and Chief Analyst of Market Intelligence here at AIIM. Bob is an expert in the application of advanced technologies and process improvement to solve business problems and enhance business operations. With over 30 years of industry experience, including product management, R&D, marketing, sales, and education, his passion is to share his knowledge and experience with organizations seeking to improve their operations, embrace technology, and drive their business forward. We also have with us Helka Fast, and Helka is the EMEA Marketing Manager for Capture Products at Kodak Alaris. He has nearly 30 years of experience working with document scanning, hardware and software development, and sales and marketing. And this I thought was really cool when I looked this up. You can find him on YouTube as Dr. Scanner. Those are some fun videos, Helka, and I'm sure you're going to chat about that later on today. But I'm going to turn things over to Bob Larrabee right now just to begin talking about triggering the business process to go paper-free. Bob?
Hi. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you. And thank you to everybody joining us, and especially to Helka and Kodak Alaris for underwriting this. One of the things that is Teresa mentioned, my role as chief analyst is to do a lot of research for AIIM, and so if you've ever gotten a survey from AIIM, then that's coming from me and my department, and I thank you so much for participating. One of the things that we all know is that paper is a big problem for most businesses, and reducing or eliminating paper is typically a common goal in many businesses, especially to get it out of processes where it can clog the business processes. And businesses, really can't work or can't afford to work, I should say, at the speed of paper anymore. They must look to become more flexible and responsive through digital transformation. In other words, become less reliant on paper and move to establish a more paper-free environment wherever possible. In some of our research, one of the questions that we asked was, which of the following would you describe your office as typical in your organization? And when we asked for this view of their offices, 17% of the folks that we heard back from said that they're mostly paper-free, with 8% citing they've implemented a digital mailroom of some sort. But 31% say that their offices are still piled high with paper, and 40% say that they're still filing important stuff on paper. So the question is really, why is paper being used? And 56% of the folks that we talked to basically said it's to capture signatures. Even though digital signature capabilities or e-signature capabilities have been around for a while and accepted for many years, basically what it comes down to is we're looking for these signatures. Apparently we feel more comfortable with a wet signature, if you will, or a physical signature, as opposed to the digital signature. So it's really interesting things that we're uncovering here, and it's kind of a cultural thing. kind of a technology thing. Some of it might be regulatory in nature. But Hoka, I'm kind of curious. What are you seeing, with the folks that you're talking with?
Yeah. Hello, Bob. And as a warm thank you to everyone who has dialed in for the call today. Yeah, we are seeing in general the same thing from the projects we have been working with here at Kodak Alaris. Many businesses still use paper, and actually until it hurts and pressing problems are coming up. For example, serious delays in customer service. So many companies are still stuck with paper under the ceiling. Even what you mentioned before, it's slow, storage costs are high, it can't be shared easily. Yeah? Only one person can have the page at one time, or you have to make a photocopy, and it's difficult to search it. And even the content of the page, that's another subject, because you would have to read it to understand it. But one thing I think we have to differentiate here a little bit between the big corporations with lots of paperwork like insurance, banks, and telecoms, for example, because they exactly know the cost of paper-based processes. And no wonder they quickly switch to scanning or even go a step further to electronic forms. But I think that here in the small and medium-sized businesses, there is still a long way to go to actually become paperless or paper-free.
Yeah, and the whole idea of process in particular, paper clogging up processes and trying to clean those up. And we did ask that question about operational processes, what business problems are you trying to solve in relation to business process? And the response that we got back was really overwhelming. 92% said that removing paper from their process is really a constant objective, and 79% said that all businesses should have e-signature mechanism of some case or some sort. So it's really kind of an interesting perspective there. 80% said paper-based content and paper-intensive processes are a huge impediment to remote access and telework. Now, this is becoming a growing thing and a growing concern. More and more mobile workers, if you will, or remote workers are out there. And so how do they access this information? And 57% are seeing paper-free as a starting point for their digital transformation. So trying to get away from the paper-based information. And this can also cause compliance errors, too, when we have this struggle dealing with paper in our processes. So in other words, 72% of those that we polled said working at the speed of paper is no longer accessible. Or acceptable. And this is really becoming the common mantra that we have to get rid of the paper out of our processes. And so, basically there's a growing movement to identify and improve paper-intensive processes through reduction and elimination, trying to unclog those paper-intensive processes, if you will. So, for some reason I'm not seeing this. There we go. So when we asked also how they would describe their progress toward eliminating paper from their businesses, pretty much 52% said they're making pretty good process. 16% are very active looking at processes. 3% say that they've actually reached their goal. And it's kind of interesting. 7% said they're sticking with paper, which is really kind of an interesting thing. And what I've found over the years is this tends to be more of a cultural thing than anything else. The idea that we feel more comfortable in some way, shape, or form with that paper element. So Hoka, given these particular statistics and some of the things that we're seeing here, is this in line with what you're seeing as well with your customers?
Yeah, I would say so. It makes it a little bit difficult between these differentiation. What are the very, very big organizations doing? What are the small and medium-sized businesses are doing? And what you mentioned before, streamlining an organization, or in other words, also the drive to be more competitive, is really the key. And I see these 48% that are still on the heavy paper side, for me as a product manager, for example, it's a fantastic opportunity to address them with document management solutions. And I think that it's still maybe people have not really understand the cost of paper. I also think that the large operations, they have done it because the cost of paper is sort of the same, but what is for, let's say, a small company, maybe the cost of 10 euros per day just to manage their paper workflow is easily 1,000 euros per day for a larger one. And it's probably just a question of time or the absolute amount that makes them to turn and to say, okay, we need to employ a digital solution here. And and that money, for example, would drive then a cost-effective solution that would allow an SMB to open up the bottleneck as same as a large corporation.
Right. And you're right. The whole idea of scale of operations is going to be very significantly different between large and small operations. Some of the larger operations, of course, they'll look at the cost sometimes and say, well, that's just the cost of doing business. But the smaller operations look at it and say, no, this is an extraneous cost. This is a huge cost for us, and we have to become much more effective at what we're doing. And so what it means is they really have to focus their priorities, right, on how to make those improvements or where to make those improvements. And so when we asked about priorities to improve the ability to capture and their capture systems, 57% see the automation of manual processes as their key focal point. And so this gets back to the idea of, the workflows, paper-intensive processes. How do we streamline that operation? How do we eliminate potential bottlenecks, if you will, as a result of paper? And the whole concept of stuck in process as a result of perhaps some paper. From an end-to-end perspective, 27% see a linkage in the speed of moving information from one process to the next as their point of focus. And so this, again, gets back to the idea of workflow and connecting the content or integrating it, if you will, with the workflow and with these processes in the business, so business operations. In security and compliance is also something that we're seeing. 16% said that they want to improve security and compliance in relation to the paper-based information and feel that the movement away from paper, getting more into a paper-free or less paper-intensive environment would certainly help with that. And so, the idea, again, streamline, automate manual processes, speed of delivery to the next process. And one of the things to think about when you look at end-to-end processes, that the end of one process is the trigger or the beginning of the next process. And so the idea of triggering your workflows in relation to passing information from one to the next. One of the things that we also look at, too, is the ability to capture earlier on in the process. The sooner we can capture information, the sooner we can get it under our control and into a process, the better off we are from an operational standpoint. And so this gets back to, or turns our focus now to drivers. What are the biggest drivers for scanning and data capture in an organization? And so the movement to improve capture and become more paper-free, not surprisingly, improve searchability and shareability of documents was the top driver for 53%. The idea that they can search, they can find, they can share. And there is a big difference between search and find. I can search for things, but it doesn't necessarily I found what I'm looking for. So the idea of improving that capability as well. And it stands to reason that since the ability to search for and find digital information is more effective and efficient than searching through paper documents, right? So the next thing that we found was productivity and reduced storage space, faster response to inquiries. And this is very key, too, when we talk about things like customer service, customer satisfaction, our ability to respond and flexibility and agility to be able to move the business in the right directions to meet customer demands and improve our satisfaction rates. Somewhat surprisingly, sustainability was only cited by 4% as a top driver, and one might think that this would rank higher given the challenges that we face in maintaining paper-based information, and the emphasis that's placed on businesses today related to things like disaster preparedness, business continuity, and so on. It's very easy to recover, or much easier to recover, a well-planned and maintained digital information environment than it is to recover paper-based information in times of floods and tornadoes, earthquakes, or any other type of chaotic or catastrophic event. And I reside in Florida, here in the United States, and this month, July, tomorrow, we enter what's known as hurricane season officially. And so everybody prepares for this. We get supplies for our houses and so on. And businesses are now looking at what would we do in time of chaos or catastrophe in that sense. And so the idea of preparedness is becoming one of the biggest drivers, or a big driver, in relation to what we're talking about here today, going paper-free and more digital. So Hoka, is this kind of in line also with what you're seeing? I mean, what are you hearing from folks in relation to being prepared and the drivers that they see?
Yeah, first of all, I think your research is really 100% spot on. And, okay, I'm sitting in Stuttgart in our office, and here we fortunately don't have tornadoes or floods or some of the disasters that happen in the U.S. or Florida specifically. So the thing of preparedness, it's coming slowly. Also the point that you mentioned, sustainability is coming, but from actually a little different aspect. For example, customers were asking about the power consumption of our scanners, and they wanted to have really a device that's not only cost effective in terms of purchasing, but also in the long-term operation. But to come to your points, I have actually two interesting case studies here. One, they're really short, and the Hughes Gray, for example, is also on my YouTube channel. Hughes Gray is a merchant for buildings material in the UK, and they, for example, had the issue that customers who got a delivery from them are sometimes losing their shipping documents, and when they get an invoice, they call Hughes Gray back and ask them to locate the original shipping document. And it took them, for example, up to 2 days to locate that shipping document because they have so many subsidiaries in the UK, and then customers calling the wrong one, and they have to check out where the delivery has been done and finding them in stacks of documents. So really, searchability and shareability was the absolute driver there to have a small document management system. And also now the truck drivers coming back with all the documents, they will be scanned, attached to a customer case, and the customer, when they call in, they can ask anyone in the company, where is my original shipping document, who has taken this delivery, they can answer it. So that's searchability and shareability. And these other case with Haus und Grund in Kiel, and I'm working on actually having a nice video case story for them. They needed to grow. The building in which all their employees were was too small. They had to get to a second location. And so their sales departments, it was impossible actually to share all the documents. So the administration really found out very quickly it's not possible to grow our business before we have not scanned all documents in and make them accessible regardless where, for example, a case specialist or a salesperson is located in. And they had a fantastic side effect. It was that they scanned all documents as a searchable PDF. And their case managers, they didn't know what the IT department was planning then. But when the system was live, they could actually then search like a sort of Google search through all the documents and all the cases they had. Can you imagine how happy the case specialists have been? This was something that was impossible before, and they had, I don't know, the whole city of Kiel, 80,000 apartments, renting in, renting out, tenants changing annually. So an unbelievable amount of documents and cases. And to your key points, really, searchability, shareability, and not only searching a specific document, but also searching the content on the document. That's really a key driver and gets customers going.
Those are great examples of that whole concept, and the idea of capturing that paper-based information early in the process. Really, it brings us greater control, greater security, but also greater accessibility. Gets it into the system, gets it into the process, so now we can not only identify it and classify it and manage it, but we can make it part of that or an integral part of the process. And which now also leads us to the discussion of multi-channel inbound content, and the idea that we have all of this information that's coming at us from many, many different directions, and we've got this information ecosystem that we're dealing with, and you've got inbound information from, of course, scanned documents. But also now, today, we created on mobile devices. We have email, PCs, and so on. And we know that inbound, this requires really multidimensional thinking in order to best address multi-channel inbound content. And when we ask this question, how do you deal with multi-channel inbound content? 40%, which was kind of surprising, but 40% said that it's really kind of ad hoc. It's an ad hoc fashion. They don't really have a structured way of dealing with all of these inbound channels. 35% said that they print their inbound content and process it the same way as they would paper. So they're receiving it digitally. It's coming into them in a digital form, but yet they're printing this electronic information and then processing it the same way as they would paper. Only 3% indicated that they actually have a comprehensive approach to multi-channel across paper, electronic, and social media. And so, when you think about the amount of technology that's out there, the ability to create what we create, creation of content is really not the challenge. We can do it, and we do it at an astounding rate. But the idea that we've got all this information coming at us in different ways, and it's still an ad hoc approach, or we're still printing, as 35% said. Get the information, print it, and then do what? Process it manually and then scan it and put it back in again. So I'm kind of curious, what are you seeing in relation with multi-channel inbound there in some of your clients?
Yeah, Bob, I really think the business really evolves, and lots of new things are happening with the multi-channel. And we also see the issue of that customers are using different systems, different platforms, nothing fits together. And and this example, someone is, for example, printing out emails or in order to scan them again to have them in another system. Unfortunately, that's common. But I mean, it's a way of progress, and it starts very simple. For example, this Agria pet insurance case that we have, and I think it's also a downloadable success story. They first have printed out documents, mailed them somewhere for the client, and to fill it in and mail it back, and then they scan it, they OCR it, and then they evolve from having their forms downloadable on a web page, so it saves them the shipping and printing costs, and later they even create electronic forms on a web page to be online filled out. And next thing is then the Twitter feeds, web forms, we had them already, SMS, emails, other channels. I mean, it's really difficult because I'm as a product manager for document scanners, and I'm just happy that we are in a very friendly cooperation with many system integrators here in Europe that actually can provide true end-to-end multi-channel solutions, and it really depends on the customer case a bit. I'm happy to make contact to our solution teams, but it's quite a challenge. I think it's really the next challenge, because from paper documents to scanned documents to electronic forms and to the whole multi-channel world, that's coming really quick to us.
Yeah. So really, I mean, kind of to restate what I was saying earlier, is businesses really do have to take a step back and look at capture from a multi-dimensional perspective, right? Addressing all aspects of it, paper, digitally born content, and so on. And they really have to get a better grip on all of the information assets in order to better meet their compliance requirements, provide higher levels of responsiveness, and increase their operational agility. I mean, when you think about it, if you're juggling all that paper, and some of this legacy paper goes back many, many years and would be very difficult to find and bring to the forefront. You know, really do have to look at it from a multi-dimensional perspective. We asked about conversion, you know, the idea of converting key processes to be paper-free, and at what rate or planned rate are folks looking at it. 14% of the respondents, 14% of the people that we talked to said they're moving very quickly, and 4% even said that they've completed this in some way, shape, or form. So looking at key processes, you know, business vital or essential processes, if you will. 37% said they're making little progress, including 11% that said they really haven't started at all. So they're still kind of at the starting line. They're still trying to figure out what they're trying to do or they want to do, what area they want to focus on. And 15% say, well, it's either very slow or it's stalled. So I think part of the challenge here is, you know, the ability to step back, identify that opportunity, you know, that area of opportunity, that process that would make the most sense, if you will, and identify those paper elements in relation to the process and how this would impact it. And so, you know, how quickly do you see folks moving? Are they the tortoise and the hare? Some of them are really out there very fast and they're making a lot of progress, and some of them are still at the starting line. Are you seeing a lot of this?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think your statistic is really about right. I think this fits really worldwide, also for Europe, and it's interesting that only here single-digit percentage of businesses are actually paper-free. Okay, the rest is moving fast, and there are a lot of processes that can be completely paper-free when you book a flight or hotel or what else. There are some that are really paper-free, but there will be always a client of a business who might take a piece of paper, pen, and send a letter. So I think there's maybe another challenge coming towards us. It's what I lined out here as a bullet point: structured and unstructured document. I think the structured documents, they're really easy to capture and process, and I think we have a good headroom on this. We have done this to the extent it can be done, but now, for example, if I get my telephone invoice and maybe it's even electronically delivered to me, but I feel there's something wrong with it. So I print it out, I start to scribble around something on it, make some notes, put it into an envelope and send it back to the telecom. So it's extremely difficult for them to process, and this leads us to some stuff of the unstructured documents. And I think there is really a growing mountain of data that will come to us. We're good with structured forms. Unstructured forms are still to come. And to the question of paper-free, I think, and this is not, I heard this somewhere else, someone said it, when schools stop children to teach how to write on paper, then we are entering the paper-free world. But until then, we will still have it. And I mean, again, as product manager of Kodak Alaris, I'm happy to be in this business. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. You know, when we stop teaching how to use paper, one of the things that I find interesting, I keep hearing, you know, stories of paper-free, and I think about, you know, the use of the cloud and how we can share this information now through the cloud, using mobile devices and so on and so forth. And it's really kind of interesting because I do travel a lot, and a lot of times I'm above the cloud, working in the cloud, but yet the people flying the plane, if you look at a lot of the airlines, especially here in the States, every airline, when you go to the gate, they still have these old dot matrix printers printing out the manifests for the pilots. So it's really kind of an interesting thing here, this balance between new technology and, of course, some of the lingering technology. But there really is great benefit from going paper-free. A lot of organizations are seeing great benefit. We found actually the return on investment could be as little as 6 months. In some cases, it's even faster, especially when it's tied to process. The idea of shortening or streamlining processes and so on and so forth. So we did ask the question about the biggest benefits. What's the biggest benefits that you're seeing from your paper-free initiatives or paper-free processes? And one of the things that really stood out, 43%, came back and said faster customer response. Now, this is really significant because they're looking at it from the standpoint of how do I, it's the customer experience, right? How do I improve my customer experience? How do I improve my ability to react to customer demand? Then we saw productivity and compliance, fall into this realm. So productivity, I'm more efficient, more effective at what I do, but it also helps me maintain compliance and regulatory, legal, and industry compliance. Then we also looked at it and said, what we found was folks were saying, I've got better insight, better visibility into my operations. I can monitor things better. I can monitor the workflow better than I ever could because now I can see everything digitally. I can track it as opposed to the paper-based stuff. I didn't know where it was in the process. It could be in transit, and if it was dealing with the postal services, then it could be somewhere, who knows, in a completely other city. But it was kind of this gray area, if you will. And so when we found out what these benefits were, we did ask about the payback periods. 59% said they actually achieved payback in less than 12 months, and 28% said it was actually shorter than that, it was in 6 months. 84%, which this is a huge number, 84% said that they started to see payback or return on their investment in less than 18 months. So the idea of shifting this transition from paper-based processes and paper-based workflows into paper-free workflows and then the benefit gained as a result of that, that's a pretty significant figure. It really is a very significant figure. And so, I'm kind of curious. What are you seeing in relation to this? ROI. Is that realistic? Is it realistic to say less than 6 months you can start realizing some benefits and return on your investment?
Yeah, Bob, I think your statistic is quite spot on. And I mean, I had customers who were ashamed to talk to me about their return of investment or actually the costs they were wasting with their paper processes in couriering documents around, not being able to share them, not being able to improve the business processes behind it. And so I did my own calculation, and in my head, okay, you have 2 drivers, cars, how many kilometers are they going to traveling between branches? And so I think it's solid. You can do return of investment under a year. And also this case of that I mentioned before, the Hughes Gray with the shipping documents. They did it and they confirmed to us that the whole return of investment for their whole system was under a year achieved. So if you follow the paper, you're able to improve something. I think a year could be realistic. And I mean, you can calculate this right in front, because you know how much your current processes cost you, how much time employees are spending on searching documents, replying customer questions, how lengthy processes are, and just by checking out how much an electronic document management could save you there, I think, a year. Most of the cases, I would really guess it's a year, and in some of those, even less. It can happen. I think you have a very good statistics there.
And I noticed here you also said reducing search times, and that's really critical too. The idea that, like I said earlier, you can search, but can you actually find? And search times they can be huge. How many times do you hear from a customer where, oh, my people spend all their time looking for information, or they go to a cabinet, they go to a file cabinet, and the information isn't there, right? The file isn't there. Now they got to start trying to figure out where it resides, and maybe it was misfiled, right? I'm sure you hear a lot about that.
Yeah, and it's really, for example, in the legal business, when you talk to lawyers, you have a 1,000 pages big case, and somewhere on one of those pages has been a keyword that could turn the whole thing upside down. And now find that and find a conjunction and how it's being used. And you need to know this paragraph. Oh, hell. Yeah. So you're much better off if you have scanned all those documents, OCR'd them, and you can search not only a specific case, but also the content of that case.
Mm-hmm. And I like what you had said before about following the paper, follow the paper through the process, and really some things to think about in relation to, how do I go paper-free? Maybe I'm the tortoise, I'm not the hare. Maybe I'm the tortoise. Or even if I am the hare, how do I now identify some other things? So, basically looking at how paper enters the business. Where does it come from? What's the source? Who does it come from? Where does it slow things down? Does it clog up the workspace? Does it clog up the workflow? Does it restrict information access and process flexibility? Do we have challenges in trying to find this information? And then the other thing, too, that I found and we should think about is who's in charge of radical process review and process change? Who's responsible for process in the organization? Is it the business manager, the department head? Is it the chief operating officer? But who's in charge of radical process review? And look for endorsement on policies of going paper-free. Can we eliminate the paper from this process? Is there a regulatory reason why we can't? That might be one of the reasons why paper still exists. I ran into that situation here in the States, where in the state of Florida, we could actually use electronic signatures in the insurance industry, but in the state of Georgia, which is to the north of us, they absolutely said no way, no how. It has to be paper-based information, and it has to be wet ink signature, and oh, by the way, it has to be blue ink. When I was in that discussion, I knew that I was going to lose the conversation, but I couldn't resist. I said, well, if blue ink is the criteria, then I can always change the font color to blue for you. And at that point, the gentleman I was speaking with said, I think this conversation has ended. But who's in charge of that radical process review, and who can endorse these policies? Also pay particular attention to processes that scan to archive or post-process and view with a change to an upfront scan-to-process approach. If we're scanning to archive, what is the reason we're scanning to archive? Is it so that people can access this information and take action on it? And so how do we link this with a process? How do we integrate this with a process? And can we scan a little bit further upstream than what we do now? And then a paper-free concept further to the point of origination is really what I'm talking about. And you've actually mentioned this a couple times in your examples. Can we do it at a branch office, at the shop, or on mobile devices, with our employees and our customers? So is there a way that we could move the capture element further upstream, get that information into the process much sooner than we do, make it accessible, make it actionable, and make it findable. And so really, I guess the bottom line is this. For everybody that's listening to us and has taken the time this morning, it is possible for your business to become less dependent on paper. It really is. In some cases, you might look at a process and say, well, this one isn't as mission critical to me. I might hold off on this one. But certainly there are some opportunities in the organization for you to go paper-free in those processes, to unclog those processes, if you will. So pretty much it's basically identify the opportunity, assess what it would take to get there, assess the value, try to understand what the value is, plan for it. And this is one of the phases, and I've seen this over and over again. In fact, there was a figure out there at one point that said 85% of initiatives were less than successful, and success was defined as being met my expectations. And when we peeled back and found out the reason why, it's because there was poor planning. Didn't really understand the business problem, the business opportunity, what was it they were trying to do, and they threw technology at a problem that really didn't exist. It was symptoms they were dealing with, not an actual business problem. So plan for it and identify what it is, set your goals. What is it we're trying to accomplish with this? And then, of course, implement it. And by implement, we're saying, yes, get this out there, get it into the people's hands, but do it systematically. Come up with a systematic approach that says we're going to do a global implementation. However, we're going to begin here in Germany, for example, and this will be our first iteration. And so what you do is you implement it, you set some measurements, define some metrics and some KPIs. Perhaps it's we want to reduce this particular process by 50%. Well, what does that really mean? It takes 4 hours to process this particular piece of information. Okay, now we have a number of time, and it's time related. So if we want to reduce this by 50%, we want to bring that from 4 hours to 2 hours, and then set a length of time over the next 6 months. So we actually have something that we can measure to make sure that we're on track, that we're doing the right things. And then refine it as you go. This should not be a drop and run type of project. There should be an ongoing mentality, continuous improvement. So we're always going back and refining what we do. We're always going back and looking for how to do things better than what we did. And, of course, repeat this. It's a methodology where we repeat this now for other areas of the company. Identify the opportunity, assess what we're going to do and what the value is, plan for it, implement, measure, refine. This is the way that we can get there to be paper-free, to move toward a less paper-intensive environment. So those are a few things to think about in relation to the discussions that we're having this morning. And Hoke, what are your thoughts? Yes.
Yeah, Bob. Actually, my thoughts are 100% in line with yours. There is nothing I can add. It's just a slightly different thing here in Europe is that the legal system is different. So I cannot sue a company into the ground or into bankruptcy just because the company cannot produce a specific document. So you maybe get away. It would depend on the judge. You maybe get away with a digital document. It's a scanned version. So that depends from here to here a little bit. Finance authorities, interestingly enough, they are in most countries okay with scanned documents. And even the stuff with the signature or electronic signature, if you are not sure or you have a very sensitive area, if you scan a document, keep it put it just on a stack, on a folder, keep it for 3 weeks, half a year, whatever. Because in most business cases, if I would ship goods to someone or there's an insurance or an insurance case and a dispute happens. This will not happen, 5 years on. But if you are not happy with the decision of the insurance to pay you a certain amount of compensation, this will happen pretty quick after the insurance has sent the letter, and things could cook up. So in these cases, you could still keep the documents for a certain amount of time. And then, if it's quiet and the customer has accepted everything, half a year later nothing happened, dump the documents. So, and if still something comes up, go 50-50 with in order what the judge might decide. And that's still cheaper even if you lose a court case from time to time, than keeping all the documents in paper archives and searching with them. So I see companies really going digital and even taking a risk over here. And the last thing, streamline your processes. The worst mistake someone can do is just taking a paper-based process, putting them into digital, and then let it run exactly the same thing. There's always the opportunity to streamline a process, make it better, reinvent it a little bit. And this opportunity should be taken. Otherwise, you would just switch yourself from one system to another system, and not much has gained.
Yeah, technology for the sake of technology a lot of times doesn't meet the expectations.
Yeah, and we're here. I think it's almost the end of our presentation now. So from my side, one thing to mention for all the customers and participants here on the call, thank you very much for dialing in today, is please visit the Kodak Alaris Knowledge Share website. We have a lot of interesting case stories there that you can download, a lot of interesting information from all the different industries. And Teresa has mentioned this in the beginning under the pseudonym Dr. Scanner. I'm on YouTube. If you type youtube.com/user/Dr. Scanner in English and one word, you will find my channel. And recently, I'm so excited about my products. I did the Dr. Scanner rep for Kodak Alaris scanners. Please have a look, and it's fun. Share this if you like it. So that would be my closing bit.
Well, thank
you.
So
we'll go back to Teresa.
Yep.
Yes, thank you. We have been listening to Helke Fast of Kodak Alaris and Bob Larrabee of AIIM, and we do have some questions that are coming in here, and so I'll give these gentlemen a chance to catch their breath here. I'm just going to go back one slide here. Helke mentioned that the Knowledge Share website that Kodak Alaris has, and just to let you know, I have a link to that in the resource list on the right side of your screen. If you click on the Let Kodak Alaris Help You Find the Perfect Solution, that's the link there that goes to this Knowledge Share website. And if you just click it now, it's going to open in a new browser for you, and you can check it out after the webinar. There's a lot of really good information in there. I really like looking through this. And also I have a link there for industry solutions from Kodak Alaris, and that takes you to a really nice library of case studies. Helke shared a whole lot of case studies in his discussion today and how their customers have been dealing with this challenging issue of going paper-free. And in this list of stories there that Kodak is sharing with you, you can sort by the different industries. So if you're looking something even more closely aligned with how you're working, there's just a lot of really good stories and examples there on how companies have been succeeding and making great strides with improving their paper-free processes. So I do encourage you to check that out. Do also want to mention that the copy of the slides are in there to download, but also there is a link in there in that resource list for downloading the Paper-Free Progress Industry Watch Report. And Bob, since this is your research, can you talk a little bit about the research in general on this paper that people can download?
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for the opportunity. Paper-Free Progress Measuring Outcomes is a report that we had done. The information that you saw in this presentation that I presented here to you comes from that full report. It is available to you. A lot of great information in here, not just what we saw here, but it's roughly about 30, 35 pages long. Got a lot of great statistics in there talking about process, talking about capture, talking about the way folks are moving more toward a paper-free environment. And in fact, in is it October, November this year, AIM will be also hosting once again the AIM World Paper-Free Day. And so you'll see some things coming out in relation to that. And what we encourage is look at a process and identify even just one piece of paper that you can eliminate from that process and do it for a day, just to try it and see how well it works for you.
And Bob, I know you have a lot of other research and also white papers that you and your team have written. I know the AIM website is a little bit had its facelift. So in the main navigation, if you click on resources at the top, then in that sub menu, click on resources again. And Bob, can you talk about some of the other Industry Watch research reports that people can find on our website?
Oh, absolutely. Industry Watch really is the bigger reports that we do. We've had two so far this year that have been released, and we're working on a third one. The first one was the State of the Industry for Information Management. Second one that we did was based on BPM, Business Process Management and Process Improvement and Automation. Some really interesting statistics there, and I am just about ready to start the analysis on our third report for this year, which is focused on SharePoint and the impact that it's having on businesses. So a lot of great things out there. We have a lot of good white papers, great stories out there, infographics, a lot of interesting information that's available to you for your information, for your knowledge, but also for you to share internally.
Thanks, Bob. I want to get to some of the questions in here. And Hauke, I want to ask this first question of you because you work with so many different industries, even with the different customer base that you have. Are you finding that some industries are more digital than others or more inclined to go digital? Or can you share your experience with that?
Who are digital? I mean, broad over all industries, you could say that scanning invoices and invoice processing has been a very big driver. And then it would be insurances. Most of them are already digital. I had an accident with my car, and they paid the damage, and I have not seen a single document on paper. Everything was done through the internet. Banks are also getting more and more digital. Telecoms. What other health? For example, all those health cases, the NHS in the UK is a fantastic example where doctors can check out the health records of patients in the clinic when they have been hospitalized, and this is all working within one system. Also, there's actually a lot of money in the health system because in Germany it's expensive. Your doctor writes you a prescription for medical treatment, and you have to go to pharmacy. The pharmacy has to get their money back from the health insurance you've been assigned onto. It's a fantastic scanning, distribution, reallocating funds, data privacy thing, and they're digitizing this more and more. But I think from the industries, when you go banking, insurance, finance, they are more digital than others, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And Bob, it's because I know all businesses can benefit from this, because even when you just think of like accounting departments and HR departments, something as seemingly simple as a leave request slip or electronic deposits, like in the finance department, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and whether it's a small business or a large corporation. I know AIM, we're a small company. We have fewer than 50 employees, and we're very paper-free in our office. Can you talk a little bit more just about how going paper-free can benefit all organizations, just starting in like accounting or finance?
Well, accounting and finance is a prime example. I've actually seen instances if you break finance out into AP/AR, you've got invoices and payments to be made, but then there's also the procurement side of things, the purchasing departments. And a lot of organizations are looking at that as an opportunity to become more digital and have more digital processes. So starting to move toward online purchase requests. So as an employee, I would go online to the employee portal or wherever it might be, fill out the request. It goes digitally through the system. In some cases, depending on the situation, using BPM, and we saw this in the BPM study, use of a rules engine that says if it meets certain criteria, there's no human intervention needed. And so what happens is the system gets the purchase request, meets the criteria, and immediately sends out a purchase order to the supplier. And so this becomes digital, and then looking at it even further is the extension beyond the corporate walls that says the supplier is part of the extended information ecosystem. And so the supplier gets that digitally, processes it, and the next thing you know, you get your product in. So really, it's an impressive thing when you start looking at a process end to end and the different approaches you can take, and even governments now. I've done a lot of training for AIIM over the years, and I'm hearing a lot of government agencies now saying that it's important we get rid of the paper from our processes, that we become more effective because of budget cuts and things like that. They're not concerned about profitability like a company would be. However, they are concerned with budgets and managing within the budget. So it really is an area of opportunity.
Thanks, Bob. I do want to mention out to the AIM audience that there's a wealth of training that AIM offers in a variety of different formats and ways just to help further your knowledge and learning on the subject. And Bob, I'm actually going to ask you again to talk a little bit about this, because in addition to the research work, you've also been very involved with our training programs in the past. And can you share a little bit about what AIM offers in the training area?
Sure. AIM training really, we're talking about capture here, and we do have the capture training course, which looks at the end-to-end process of capture and how you do things like distributed capture and centralized capture and so on. But we do offer a myriad of courses out there, ranging from ECM as a whole, BPM, records management, and so on. And I do encourage you, go out there, take a look at it. There's a lot of different ways you can approach it. You can do online training with us. You can do live training with us. A lot of flexibility, and even private classes if you wanted.
Yeah, I know. I recently personally took the ERM, Electronic Records Management practitioner course, and what I learned was just fantastic, and I was able to do it in person. So, yes, it's a wealth and variety of training available to everyone. Well, we are getting to the end of our webinar hour, and just wanted to remind everyone that we have recorded this webinar, and it will be available in the next day or two on the AIM website. So, invite your colleagues to come back and listen to this. And with our new website, we'll be able to find it in the Resources tab. There's a link there for webinars, and you can see our library of webinars on demand available to you, then also the list of upcoming webinars. Don't forget to download the resources and click over to those links that we have for you that's on the right side. And also, when the webinar is over, a brief survey is going to open up on your desktop, and I greatly value your feedback and would like to hear from you. And so appreciate if you just take a few minutes to answer the questions there and suggest some other topics for us to cover. I do want to thank our underwriter, Kodak Alaris. Without the support from our solution providers, AIM wouldn't be able to provide you with these free educational programs like our webinars. So thank you very much, Kodak Alaris, for your sponsorship. As we do come to a close on our webinar, I would like to leave everyone with the closing thoughts of our speakers. So I'd like to begin first with Helke Fast of Kodak Alaris. Your closing thoughts today.
Yeah, thank you, Teresa. So my key takeaway would be think about your paper-based workflows. We, Kodak Alaris, are here really as a professional solution provider and ready to assist you with any sort of document management or content management project. We have sales specialists and consultants in almost every country worldwide. And we are not far. Please check out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. Make contact with me or one of our specialists, and we are really happy to help you to save money, become paper-free, and work more efficient.
Thank you, Hauke. And Bob Larrabee of AIIM, your closing comments today.
Well, I think it's a quite simple one. Becoming paper-free, even though it's not going to be an overnight thing, and I've been saying this since 1984, that, we'll be paper-free. We're still not quite there. It is doable, and it's even more doable today than it ever was. The key is getting back to looking for the opportunity. I think Hauke said it best, which is follow the paper through your process, and that way you'll understand how the paper moves, how it impacts process, but also you'll identify areas of opportunity to remove that paper from the process and become more efficient in your operations.
Thank you, Bob. And thank you, everyone, for your time today. For AIIM, this is Teresa Resick, and we'll see you next time. And have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you. Bye-bye.